So World War I, 1914 to 1918, the bad guys were the Central Powers and the Allies were everybody else. And of course, that's why they call it a world war, is because the world was involved with fighting one another. And so the Central Powers, there were four of them. The empire that basically is credited or blamed for starting the war was Austria-Hungary. Any of this coming back to anybody at all? Probably not. Okay, a little bit. Does anybody remember one of the other ones? Germany, all right, yes, sir. Well, Germany, if you don't remember anything else, Germany was the bad guy country in World War I, and it was also the bad guy country in World War II. Okay, so that kind of makes that easy. One of them, anyway. So Austria-Hungary, Germany, Bulgaria, and you can't see because the podium's in the way. I'll put it over here so I can block you where you can't see. It isn't a happy place. And the other one was the Ottoman Empire. And of course, if you look at a map, the reason why they're called the Central Powers is they're in the middle of Europe. Let's see if we can find us a map. Well, poodle. Well, they don't have a good map. All right. But let's look at this. If this is Europe, all of this right here is Europe, Asia, Africa. Okay, the Central Powers then were in the middle, in the center of Europe. So you had Germany, and Austria and Hungary, of course, are two countries today, but they were one empire at one time. Matter of fact, it was rather large. They had to split up as a result of World War I. That was one of the conditions of the treaty that ended the war. And then Bulgaria is also just south of Austria-Hungary. And then the Ottoman Empire made up what is modern-day Turkey and down in part of the Middle East, because the Ottoman Empire was Muslim, and so it made up this region here. And so those four were the bad guys. And so, like I said, the Allies would be just about everybody else, including the USA, but we don't get involved until 1917. The key players right off the bat are Russia, and it is Russia, not the Soviet Union, in 1917. Russia and England, and all the little European countries, and eventually the USA gets involved, of course. And so these, plus a whole bunch more, I'm gonna do ... Okay, we're not gonna learn all of them. We're gonna learn some of them, but not all of them. You've got Belgium, and Italy even is gonna join on the Allied side during World War I. It's gonna be on the enemy side in World War II, but in World War I, it's gonna be over here on the Allies. Okay, now, why in the world did it start? That's probably always the question. Because if you can figure out why things start, why wars begin, why would you want to do that? What's the key to that?
To figure out how to resolve it, so you end it.
Resolve it, end it, but also you want to learn from history so that we don't do what? Repeat it, so we don't do it again, okay? So we want to learn what were the problems, and to be honest, in some ways, we're repeating some of those problems today. It's kind of scary in a way, because people don't tend to know their history, but I hope you guys will know your history. But anyway, so you had the bad guys versus the good guys. Well, there's several things about why it started. And historians always try to simplify things. and that's not a bad idea. But there's 4 main reasons, and they made an acronym out of the reasons. MAIN. You remember any of this at all, maybe a little bit? Okay, we gotta go back to 9th grade and start all over. Y'all wouldn't mind to quit being juniors and just become freshmen again, would you? See, you'd fit right in with the 9th grade today. No, nobody fits in. No, anyway, I'm just kidding. I like the 9th grade. Anyway. One of the reasons was militaryism. Lots of countries were building up their military buildup. And of course that creates tension. I mean, just think about it for a second. Today, if, like North Korea, if North Korea launches like a practice run of a missile, everybody gets panicky, everybody worries. Okay, does Kim Jong-un, does he have a nuclear weapon that he's gonna, hold the world hostage because he can blow the world up? If Canada were all of a sudden starting to really build up their military, maybe increase the number of men and women that had to be in their military, and all of a sudden they started developing all these weapons, and we'd kind of go, well, what are you guys doing? I mean, all of a sudden you're going to become a world military power. It makes all the other countries around them especially a little nervous. I mean, I always say this, and I don't know if you remember it or not, but think of countries as people. It's like, okay, here's China's one person, here's Canada's one person, here's the United States is one person. And so if you were all individuals and you felt like you were being bullied or threatened by one of the others, it creates tension. It makes where there's a problem. I mean, if all of a sudden you guys started to not get along with one another, and if Cassandra had let some of the girls know, hey, as soon as we get a chance, we're going to beat up Tanner. Okay, we're going to take him down, okay? Because he's been mean to me, and I want y'all to help me. Okay, well, Tanner goes to all his buddies, and he says, look, the girls are coming for me. Y'all got to help me. Okay, so, well, for one thing, the teachers would learn about this, and so we'd all be like, okay, you got to watch those juniors. They are getting ready to go for a brawl. They're going to fight one another. It's crazy. And so we'd all be watching you out in the hallway, and everybody would be on guard, We'd make plans. Okay, if Cassandra jumps on Tanner, what are we going to do? I mean, you call the police, you call 911, you wrestle them down, whatever. Okay, well, that's the way it is with countries. When countries start pushing one another around, really, you got to remember, countries are made up of people. So when they feel threatened, they're going to push back. And they're going to organize allies that will help them to fend off against somebody who's getting ready to attack them. So that's the next thing, is they start to build up alliances. They start making friendships with other countries. And that's not such a bad thing. What's bad, though, is when you exclude somebody. I mean, how do you all feel? If you're kind of in the little clique, now your class is pretty good. Y'all are so small, hopefully, y'all get along pretty good with everybody. But what if you were big? What if you were like the size of the 10th grade? Okay, and you really, there was a group over here that didn't like a group over there, and you really broke into cliques, and you broke into divisions, okay, and you left certain people out. Those people that feel left out, oftentimes they are just kind of very leery of what the others are doing. They're just a little apprehensive. Do you see what I'm saying? There's tension. There's just tension between all these countries. I mean, right now we have a great deal of tension with Russia. We have a great deal of tension with China plague spreader. You know, we have a great deal of tension with North Korea. We have all this tension going on. If something were to happen, and God forbid, and we need to pray that it doesn't, but I mean, if something were to happen where one country seen one of the other countries as actually threatening them, like with war, then who knows? I mean, it wouldn't take very much to make it all, you know, become a big war. So when they were building up their military might, they were developing alliances, leaving certain groups out. They also wanted to expand their empire. We've already talked about this a little bit with the Spanish-American War and how we annexed. What all did we annex? Do you remember? We took in Hawaii, we got Guam, the Philippines, part of Cuba, American Samoa. Okay, we were expanding, the United States was expanding its empire. Well, all of these other countries are wanting to do that too. They want to build up their turf. They want to have more and more and more power and more and more and more land. And so there again, you've got a country that's building up its weapons so it could take you over. It's allying itself with a bunch of other countries so together they could invade your turf. It wants to become larger. It wants to expand. So there's lots of countries that are really feeling threatened and they feel tension amongst each other. And the next one is nationalism. Okay, nationalism, in my opinion, is a good, bad thing. It's an oxymoron. Nationalism says my country's the best. My country's number one. Okay, everybody should be like me. Okay, so that's good in a way. Today we think of that as patriotism. We love America. We love our country. We want to celebrate America and its freedom and the fact that you have the ability to make choices in America, and a lot of other countries don't. But when you've got a lot of countries that feel like they're number one and everybody should be like me, okay, then again, it just adds to that tension, that overall tension that is going to be existing in Europe in 1914. Okay, are we good? All right, so there's going to be a spark that starts the war, and that's what I want us to look at just real quick. And I want it, okay, it's on page 412. Look on page 412. Okay, so let's read this little section. Anybody volunteer? I need about 3 readers. Come on, it'll wake you up, it'll get you going. Back in school, we're happy. You're smiling behind those masks. I know you are. Somebody want to read? I'll read the first one. Somebody jump in and pick up the second one, okay?
What page are we on?
We're on page 412. 412. Macy's department store, everybody follow along with me, okay, had men's summer suits on sale for $6.95. That's a pretty good deal. Today you couldn't buy one for $60.95, which shoppers could top off with cool straw hats for a low clearance price of $1.59. For readers of the Sunday edition of the New York Times on June 28, 1914, this is a big date. Write that down. June 28, 1914. The ads were another reminder that vacation was just around the corner. Elsewhere in the paper, headlines told how the tough fists of boxing champ Jack Johnson had put yet another challenger on the canvas. The Brooklyn Dodgers made easy work of the Philadelphia Phillies in yesterday's doubleheader, and Kay Laurel was appearing on Broadway with the Ziegfeld Follies. You all have never heard of any of that, have you? That's early days of early 20th century. The newspaper's political cartoon that day, celebrating a number of successful diplomatic initiatives, depicted a rusty, scabbarded sword over the caption, "Another Business Depression." It was a comforting cartoon for that balmy summer morning in America. But halfway around the world, a distant disturbance on that sleepy Sunday was destined to shake an unwary America and the world off its 19th century foundation. In many ways, the 20th century began on June 28, 1914, in an obscure little city in Central Europe called Sarajevo. Sarajevo is the site. Sarajevo, Serbia. It's in the country of Serbia, which is relatively small. Because there's going to be a fellow there, and I'll just tell you the rest of the story. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, you've got to know this guy. French fries and Fran. His real name was Francis, but he's usually shortened for, Franz. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia were together riding in an open-air car. We'd maybe call it a convertible today, but you got to remember this is the early days of vehicles, okay? So you don't have the luxury liners that you have today. But he was riding in an open-air car in a parade, kind of like a parade, just welcoming him. He was in Sarajevo, and a member of a terrorist group called the Black Hand, you'll want to remember that, walked right up to the car and shot him. And shot him and his wife. Killed them both. He slumped into her lap and she said, "What is it?" And he said, "It is nothing, it is nothing." But it was the beginning of World War I. Because this was the spark that ignited the tension that had been building up throughout all those European countries. Because Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the throne of the Empire of Austria-Hungary. So you'll need to know all of that. He was going to be the next leader of that Empire of Austria-Hungary. And if you look at the map, and of course this map, it may not even have Serbia. No. This map has Yugoslavia, which Yugoslavia, really you would divide it up, and Serbia is right in there. But it was just south, Serbia. We're going to do a map that shows it to you more exactly. But in Serbia, just south of Austria-Hungary, when Franz Ferdinand is assassinated, this is where he's going to launch World War I. Because truly, these countries were wanting to expand their empire. So they were looking for an excuse. Give me a reason to invade. Kim Jong-un today of North Korea would probably be saying, give me a reason, just do something that would make me want to, if I were capable of launching a nuclear weapon, maybe he would just say, give me a reason to do it. And of course, as crazy as he is, might not need much of a reason. But anyway, this is the spark that started World War I, and that's all we're going to do for today, okay? That's really what I wanted you to know for today. But let's just review for just a minute before we really quit. So look over your notes for just a minute, and then I'm going to have you put your notes away, and I'm going to ask you some questions.